Now we're going to bring in our first speaker, Professor Ayyoob Sharifi, Professor IDEC Institute, Hiroshima University, Japan. Professor Ayyoob Sharifi is a distinguished scholar in urban planning, climate change, and sustainable city development. He is a professor at the IDEC Institute, Hiroshima University, focusing on smart cities resilience and climate change mitigation and adaptation. With a background in civil engineering and urban planning, it contributes to global research and policy initiatives through initiatives such as Future Earth. He served as a lead author for the IPCC and UN Habitat World Cities Report, advancing sustainable, inclusive, and resilient urban development worldwide. Professor Ayyoob Sharifi, thank you so much for honoring our invitation today. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone, to the World Environmental Day Symposium. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to give this talk. I want to talk about critical intersection in our urban future. I think Professor Walsh provided a very good context for the talk. So I will give you some more details on resilience and how it could be linked to sustainable development goals. So let's start by looking at why these two concepts are important and cannot be separated. So resilience, as we know, is often viewed simply as bouncing back from a disaster, but it's much more. It's a framework for long-term sustainability, and progress in urban resilience directly accelerates our SDGs, and it's also vice versa. However, midterm assessments show we are failing and falling behind on key goals like climate action. So we need a more integrated approach to addressing issues from a planning perspective. However, when we look at current resilience efforts, a glaring imbalance emerges. So we know that, as you see in this slide, our strategies currently heavily focus on environmental goals like sustainable cities and also climate action. But we critically overlook socioeconomic targets like poverty, hunger, and inequality. And if we continue this way, we may risk building climate resilient cities that are deeply unjust. So when we do get it right, the co-benefits are immense, as I want to emphasize in this short talk, as can be seen also in the next slide. So here, this matrix, which is an output of a recent publication that I will later introduce, maps relationships between urban resilience solutions and characteristics, and also the SDGs across two halves. So the upper half examines co-benefits, trade-offs, and also mixed effects of resilience solutions. And here you see that nature-based solutions show the most co-benefits. So these are solutions that today I will mention several times. For instance, they support ecological balance, clean water, energy efficiency, climate adaptation, also public health. On the other hand, gray infrastructure, which is the common way of infrastructure development in cities, it could generate trade-offs. And this is despite enabling urbanization when well planned. We know that this gray infrastructure is emphasized, and in many cases, it results in trade-offs. However, nature-based solutions align best with SDG ambitions, and unlike those, gray infrastructure amplify risks. And also, of course, there are context specificities, but in most cases, this gray infrastructure could amplify risks. At the bottom, the lower half, we can see that resilience characteristics could be linked to SDGs through reciprocal reinforcement. And here, adaptability is the most critical characteristic that underpins different SDGs. For instance, 13 SDGs here have specifically been highlighted. Equity and justice show the strongest mutual relationship with SDGs 11, 13, 10, 1, 2, 5, and also 16, which is overlooked in many cases despite its importance. SDG 11 on cities directly influences nearly all resilience characteristics, and this confirms its centrality, of course, when it comes to urban development. SDGs 13, 7, 6, and also 16 also feed back into key resilience attributes. And the matrix also should be emphasized that only captures explicitly document relationships in the literature. So it's just for mainly illustration purpose, but somehow evidence-based based on what has been reported in the literature. So now let's look at some more specific examples. As I said, nature-based solutions are very important, and these are perfect examples of synergies and co-benefits across different SDGs and with resilience. Initiatives like sponge cities and also urban forestry don't just mitigate flood risks or heat islands, they also actively advance SDG 6, for instance, for water security, SDG 11 for sustainable cities, and also SDG 13 for climate action. And also the benefits aren't just ecological, they can also be profoundly social. So that means when resilience strategies are inclusive, they directly combat poverty and hunger. Disaster risk reduction, for instance, protects the fragile livelihoods of vulnerable communities. And meanwhile, urban agriculture and green roofs create local food security and provide mental health benefits. But we must be honest with ourselves. These interventions aren't always win-win, especially as I mentioned earlier, when emphasis is on gray infrastructure, there could be serious trade-offs. Specifically, large-scale interventions and resilience projects, they can trigger unintended resource conflicts. For instance, massive renewable energy installations can displace agricultural land. They can threaten food security and also biodiversity that way. Also, informal urban farming can sometimes rely on untreated water, for instance. And this could pollute our ecosystems. So meaning that even green infrastructure, if not designed and implemented properly, they could result in trade-offs. The social trade-offs are often even more devastating. So this means resilience isn't inherently positive, and top-down infrastructure projects like, for instance, giant flood channels frequently could lead to forced evictions of informal settlers, and this could worsen poverty and inequality. Furthermore, pouring municipal budgets into hard infrastructure could divert crucial funds away from education and healthcare. And this is when the very people who need protection are often excluded. So, how do we navigate these complexities? So, the main answer is through proper and inclusive governance. Inclusive governance indeed can and must anchor all our strategies. So we need to give vulnerable population, these are different groups like women, elderly, migrants, children, a decisive voice in planning, and we must build local capacity and shift from rigid top-down mandates to adaptive policies that reflect real needs of people in the context. Alongside inclusive governance, we should also emphasize the right physical interventions. And this, again, brings me back to nature-based solutions that I mentioned earlier, because they sit at the intersection of ecological health and human well-being. And these solutions offer the highest co-benefits across all SDGs. They, for instance, restore biodiversity, manage stormwater, and also cool our cities, and often more equitably than the gray infrastructure could do. So to truly minimize trade-offs, we must change how we plan. And again, governance is very important. We must adopt integrated nexus planning. For instance, by optimizing the water, energy, food nexus, we can ensure that solving a water, energy, food nexus and crisis would not continue, or using real-time data and mandating holistic evaluations or assessments, which were earlier mentioned in today's opening remarks. For all projects, they could also allow us to foresee and mitigate systemic impacts. So the main takeaway here is that resolving systemic trade-offs requires moving beyond siloed projects, and true resilience requires stacking governance, spatial planning, and also technology that could be integrated into single and cohesive urban strategy. So to wrap up, building a resilient urban future requires more than just surviving shacks. It requires a just transition, and by unlocking co-benefits and honestly confronting trade-offs, we can achieve the SDGs. And if you're interested, please check this published paper in Habitat International, which provides more details on how different SDGs could be linked to resilience in terms of both co-benefits and trade-offs. And so I want to leave you with this message that by unlocking co-benefits and confronting trade-offs, we can indeed achieve SDGs. And I hope this talk will give you insights on how to maximize co-benefits and minimize trade-offs in whatever sector that you might be involved with. Thank you, and back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Ayyoob Sharifi. I'm just going to, so thank you so much for that very powerful and practical presentation. And you've helped us see that urban resilience is not automatically positive unless it is inclusive, it is well-governed and carefully measured. So I was particularly struck by your point that a city can become climate resilient, yet still remain deeply unjust if poverty, inequality, displacement, food security, and vulnerable communities are ignored. So a follow-up question will be that for cities in the Global South, where resources are often limited and informal settlements are common, how can governments practically balance urgent climate resilience projects with the need to protect vulnerable communities from displacement and exclusion?
Thank you very much for a very insightful question. I understand, and on paper, this could be very easy, but when it comes to the real context, it could be very challenging, especially in the Global South context. But I believe even in Global South, even in the most poor countries, it's possible to help or to design strategies that enable us to avoid trade-offs through participatory planning, through direct engagement with the local stakeholders, and also through mapping of potential solutions that we can take. And again, I think it's important to focus on solutions that could provide multiple co-benefits, and nature-based solutions, green infrastructure would be those kind of solutions. And another important issue is to avoid this vicious cycle of short-term planning. I think that's something that has been causing problems in many cases, and in most cases, that kind of short-term planning in the long term locks especially vulnerable communities into pathways that are not resilient. So my suggestion is to focus on those kind of key planning strategies to be participatory and also to have long-term vision rather than short-sighted visions that, especially in cases where election cycles are important, become a trap in many cases. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We would have loved to take more questions, but because we're running behind schedule, so thank you very much. If you would like to, for our audience to, if they have any more questions, please feel free. We can share an email address where they can reach you. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.